Happy Workers' Day to Nigerians. It's International Workers' Day. May 1 is significant across the world. A day that is usually observed to take stock of the plight of workers, their welfare, well-being, and issue of productivity, because you don't talk about welfare and well-being without bringing productivity. How productive are Nigerian workers? How was the remuneration like? Are they well motivated and all that? Expect rallies in Abuja state capitals, what capitals across the world, as workers' rights remain on the front burner. But beyond that, in the road to 2027 general election in Nigeria, the Supreme Court yesterday became very busy. The first judgment for the PDP came 2 p.m. The second one for the ADC came 4 p.m. I just recalled yesterday how Nigerians will wait for the Supreme Court to decide the actual winner of presidential election. And yesterday, all eyes were on the judiciary again, the same apex court, to decide who is the authentic leadership of these two parties. For the ADC, some say it's a temporary relief. Go back to the High Court to argue your case. Another High Court case had already told the David Mark leadership, concluded at the High Court that you shouldn't be in place. So the matter will travel to the Court of Appeal, up to the Supreme Court. And the one the Supreme Court referred the leadership back to, Justice Wite, will also take place. And finding its way back to the Supreme Court. So people are asking questions, what will be the fate of ADC? Would it be safe for the party, or for people to pick up the candidacy of the party? For the PDP, some confusion. The Wike group said, yes, the issue of faction is no more. Do not call factional PDP again, because the Supreme Court was clear in the fact that the Ibadan Convention that threw up the leadership of Taminu Turaki was annulled and of no effect. But the Taminu Turaki group is saying that because the Supreme Court upheld the suspension of Samuel Anyanwu Batura and some others who are members that organized the convention that threw up this present leadership, the party is leadership-less. Without leadership, so meeting has been convened of a board of trustees of the party with a view to setting up indeed an interim management of the party. So that of PDP, not yet decided. Adebo Abodori is there. Chuks is also here. More confusion in PDP. The Supreme Court judgment came, but the different parties are interpreting it, or do I say misinterpreting it differently?
Well, good morning, Amishi. Good morning to Chuks in the studio, and good morning to our listeners and viewers on the YouTube. Let me begin by saying a big Workers' Day to greeting to workers all over the world. Today is your day. Today is our day.
Yes. Our possessive pronoun.
Yeah.
I can see your NLC, TUC, cap, and shirt to match. Are you proceeding to the Eagle Square from here?
I may not necessarily go there. I was in the national executive of NLC for over 5 years. I was in the state working committee of the NLC in Kano under Comrade Bafagaya. So I still remain part of NLC. I can't separate. I don't see myself separating myself from the labor movement.
Okay, Comrade Adebo Abodore,
so,
continue.
And then let me begin by, before I go into the issue you have raised, let me begin by also paying tribute to Balarabe Musa and Abubakar Rimi, all of blessed memory, that raised the consciousness of the need to observe today as public holiday in Nigeria. 46 years ago, 1980, May 1 to be precise, was the first time that May Day was marked in Nigeria, in Kano and Kaduna State then, under the People's Redemption Party. They had won and took the following year before the federal government joined and it has become public holiday for Nigerian workers. Workers today, I was reflecting on the day yesterday and I look around and I say it's a day of pride. It's also a day of pain. Nigerian workers are going through harrowing pains. The 70,000 naira minimum wage, which they call, can no longer take them home. They call it home pay, but it cannot take them home. I think these are issues that need to be addressed. Well, coming to issue of PDP, I think there is confusion. And I think if the party members and leaders are sincere, they should sit down and seek a way of resolving. The way all of them are blowing hot is an indication of the fact that they don't want an end to the crisis. And when you don't want an end to the crisis at a time when primaries are set to begin, it raises a very, very big question whether indeed really PDP will be on the ballot this next year, January. If you look at it, everybody is giving their argument. It's a game of politics anyway. And so I'm not surprised at the different interpretation being given to the Supreme Court verdict. As far as those who are aligned to the FCT minister is concerned, it's victory for them. Their group is signed in leadership position, but the other group is treating different meaning. And Senator Adolfo Wabara came yesterday and said there is no room for vacuum. As chairman of BOT,
Board of Trustees,
he has stepped in because the provision of the party also provides for that. But the other Board of Trustees of those aligned to FCT Minister, Mao Habua, is also claiming too that as far as they are concerned, PDP is back, and it's time for them to sit down and think seriously of fielding candidate. But I think if the two factions, if they really have the interests of the party as they are claiming, it's time for them to seek a way out following the Supreme Court judgment yesterday.
Okay. All right. Good morning, Amiche. Good morning, Bayo Boduri, and to all our listeners and viewers. First and foremost, congratulations to the Nigerian workers. And with what Bayo has said with the Nigerian workers, I hope there will be more protection as well for Nigerian workers going forward. We are not where we used to be. Today I was on
protection in terms of
job security, salaries and all of that. Not long ago, I read a tweet of someone who said they were in the office one day and their boss walked in and looked and said, "You and you, how much do you earn?" And they both mentioned respectively and said, "Okay, we don't need your services anymore. They'll pay you 1 month, extra." So all this kind of protection against such activities is needed. Better labor laws are needed as well. And there's still Nigerians out there who are feeling that labor institutions are not really doing enough, for them. So the labor institutions need to
not offering that protection.
Yes, for them as workers.
The labor union, you mean?
Yes, the labor union.
The TUC, NLC.
Yes, going forward. So they also still need to do more, going forward in keeping the trust that the Nigerian worker will have in such institutions. And that's also directed to Mr. Boduri, who has, I'm sure, connections with them. And also in
so do you notice a downside kind of a law in the activities of these labor unions in recent times?
Well, a lot of with statements, going out there. I've heard, labor used to be very powerful. Back in the day, every government used to be scared, of labor and all of that. But I must say, sorry, in my own time, I don't think it's the case.
So that fear of the labor union
I don't think it's there right now. Since I've started working for 5 years, 6 years, and there are people who are still going to be coming into
because there are some policies and programs of the government. If they're planning within their situation room, they'll be saying, let's factor in labor's reaction. It seems we don't get that. They don't care about how labor will react
to it. So it just shows you that labor needs to actually, tighten its seat belt, buckle up, and do the work for the Nigerian worker.
In other words, they
there.
should back and possibly bite where necessary.
Yes, absolutely.
Not like
stand their ground.
a toothless bulldog.
Yes. So we need that for the Nigerian worker, and hopefully we'll get that going forward. Moving on from that and to the issue of the ADC and the PDP. It's a very, should I say, interesting one, especially for the ADC.
Let's conclude with the PDP before we move over to the
Okay, so for the PDP, I think on X yesterday, the official verified handle of the official PDP posted about suspensions of Sam Anyanwu.
Meanwhile, the official handle is still with is still being in the possession of a Taminu Turaki.
Yes, and I think that's where that also story started spreading, and a lot of people, started reverberating it, because yesterday on the news on AIT, we had a guest, which I think is also inclined to the weaker side of things, talking about how that was not in the judgment at all in the Supreme Court. So I think also the Supreme Court.
So there are claims and counterclaims of what is.
Yes, of what was stated by the Supreme Court. So I think when judgments like that are given, the Supreme Court should be able to release the CTC as early as possible, so that everybody,
Tuesday, Wednesday,
everybody should have an understanding of what's happening in the PDP. But as what Bayo said,
that's certified true copy.
Yes,
a certified true copy is a document from the court detailing the document delivered, because in court yesterday they just read it out.
Yes.
But it takes time for them to cross the T's, dot the I's, and then release it to the public. It's after that is done that you begin to understand what really they said.
Yes. And according to the Bayo Boduri, if every party faction is really interested in the growth of PDP, seeing PDP being a viable, opposition for the 2027 elections, I think it's time for them to just take the backseat with the fighting, and the bickering, and look for a way forward.
Is it possible for that reconciliation? Because it appears their interests are divergent.
Yes, but it might be because our guest as well on the news yesterday on AIT talked about how the NWC, the
National Working
that will be in charge now, are going to be able to reach out to men of character. And I asked, are the men of character the likes of Sheyi Makinde, Turaki and co, which I get an answer?
Maybe another answer another question I want you to ask, because but we're talking about your desire for reconciliation and fence mending within the PDP. One faction says we'll support Tinubu, a candidate of the other party. The other said never. So how are they going to?
That is where the problem is. That's where the problem is.
So that's why someone says irreconcilable.
That is the thing. This is everybody is driven by personal interest, and when personal interest is placed above the interest of a political group or a platform or a party, definitely you see that is why probably
they go for broke.
And then more and more they will sink deeper and deeper into crisis.
Yes, I've asked this question before.
So did you align with this submission because of this divergent
before that? When a person like the FCT minister, who we know is in the forefront of the faction that's currently, in charge of the PDP, we know he's in the forefront, and he's working for the current government, which is for another party, and he has not hidden his support for the president. How do you reconcile that, especially with him talking about how they are going to put forward a 2027 candidate? And I remember in the past, the official handle of the PDP said, whoever they put forward for the presidential election will shock Nigerians. So how do we reconcile that? Putting up an opposition to who is also the government that is being supported by another side of the party. So these are issues that really need to be ironed out. And we saw not long ago the likes of Sheyi Makinde in the opposition convention, which was also hosted, in his state, which is also going to be fighting the current APC in the 2027 election, saying that they're going to work hand in hand. So it's a lot of issues. It's a big one, but it looks like it might not end soon.
Yeah,
for the PDP, it might not end soon, and everybody has a shot.
So you're quite right. Anxiously, observers, litigants are waiting for the CTC. If it points at a straight path for the party towards 2027, good and fine. But if it doesn't, you see a situation where an aggrieved group may go back to the High Court seeking to enforce certain provisions, certain parts of the Supreme Court judgment. If there are gray areas, if they are not clear, as it were.
I have my fears. I have my fears whether even when we get the full judgment and we're able to read it and all the rest. Issues that are
Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's have your mails now. Fumi is ready.
Good morning, Nigerians. Happy Workers' Day to every one of us. Welcome to the mail segment on Political Platform. My name is Fumilayo Emopai. And our first mail today is coming from Omolayo John from Orozo, Abuja. I am wishing Nigeria Labour Force happy Workers' Day celebrations. President of Nigeria Labour Congress is just acting like a factional leader and dog that cannot back and bite without proper achievement. It is well with us, and God bless Nigeria Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress. Emeka Mba from Abuja is also saying, permit me to use this medium to celebrate Nigerian workers in particular and workers around the world in general. Above limitations delivered on their jobs and are fulfilled against all odds, either by commission or omission, whatever means, and sadness for those ones in the oppression, victimization, and frustration and frustrating welfare packages. Government cannot beat their chest regarding the civil servants because of very poor remuneration that don't even come as and when due, with avoidable industrial actions by the workers to press home their legitimate demands, always looming with the authorities, sometimes not in any way sensitive to their plight. I make bold to submit that the only reason workers are not well catered for is because of the endemic corruption in our system and quality of funds. As often declared, pensioners cannot access their contributory pension funds over the years. Contractors are owed for years with the Laji Abbas from Ida local government in Kogi State is also saying Dr. Amechi Anakwe was the subject of the late president. I beg your pardon, please, was the subject of the late President Muhammadu Buhari out of foundation when he accused the PDP of fostering terrorism. Who cast the first stone? To mention a few, former President John to the dread haram with his circle. Former President Obasanjo, in his famous letter, alleged that Jonathan was seeking snipers for a political watch list that does not spare the name of OBJ2. Was the hail of bullets fired at Buhari's car in Kaduna not an act of political terrorism against a leading opposition figure? Not to mention the act of smuggling arms into the country via a private jet of a popular pastor that was intercepted by South African authorities. It was unnecessary to mock President Muhammadu Buhari in your parting word on this platform yesterday. May Almighty God, in his divine wisdom, deliver my country, Nigeria. Amen. Steve Omar Ofozo from Lagos also is sharing his thoughts. He said, the federal government on Thursday again approved contracts worth 2.99 billion for 3 rail projects across Lagos, Kaduna, and Kano State. This is coming after the Federal Executive Council had already approved the demolition and complete reconstruction of a said failing Qatar Bridge in Lagos with a total project cost of 548 billion naira. Also recently, the approval of Badagry Sokoto Expressway that will cost trillions of naira was approved. There is the Lagos Calabar Coastal Road of 16 trillion and is still ongoing. Now the question is the Nigerian map now only northwest, southwest? Where is my southeast in all of these juicy elephant projects? Is my southeast still part of Nigeria project? Mr. President, I asked. Ironically and sadly, Southeast Railway, Enugu Onitsha Road, and Benin Agbo Asaba Onitsha, among others, are still hanging forever, and no one is talking about them. Against this background, without mincing words, I make bold to say, as always, that total and sincere restructuring of Nigeria remains imperative now for true federalism to be operational. This is the much we can take this morning on the mail segment. Please keep sending your mails with your names and locations to politicalplatform@dagroup.com. Happy Workers' Day.
Yes, and Fumi goes back to work after reading the mail. She's one of our producers on AIT. So, working on Workers' Day. Workers rise up, drop the chains, and continue to indeed fight for your rights. But let's turn to ADC. Now, ADC's case on our YouTube channel, people are asking, is it victory or is it a temporary solace and other? Key issues in the Supreme Court judgment. The antebellum order suspended, lifted. So INEC responded quickly by restoring the name of a David Mark-led executive on the and all that. But the second one is go back to the High Court for the matter to be heard. So it will travel after Justice Witte give judgment from the High Court to the Appeal Court, from the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. It's not just that matter that will get to the Supreme Court for the ADC. There was a judgment that came 2 days ago.
Well, we watch out what will happen at the High Court. They've asked them to go back to the court. All the cases that are there must be dispensed with. And we watch out and see what becomes of them, since there are subsisting cases which are being heard, and we can't go into merit and demerits of it now until they are argued there. But my take on the Supreme Court judgment is that its neutrality on all matters must not be in doubt. Its impartiality must not be in doubt. That is one thing which we take away from the Supreme Court judgment of yesterday. The second point for me is that nobody is invaluable, and so when you make mistake,
Infallible, right?
Yes.
yeah, when you make mistake, the best to do is to admit that mistake and apologize. INEC must apologize to ADC for the way and manner, the horrid manner of interpretation of a court judgment, which the Supreme Court said was unnecessary and uncalled for.
No, I thought the Supreme Court said it was a preservative order, but in its wisdom, it lifted it.
Well, it lifted it, but when it lifted it, is that it's an indication of the fact that in the first place that they will have been more careful.
Yeah, clearly
interpreting
a
that
very
thing.
strong point. INEC appeared hasty in either interpreting or misinterpreting.
So that is the more reason why I say the most, as the commission. I'm not asking Amupitan to as a person. I'm asking as a commission, a statutory commission recognized by the Constitution. If you have made that sort of mistake, apologize. It doesn't take anything away.
Well, for the
you wait forever for the commission to apologize. I can assure you that.
But for the ADC, the David Mark-led leadership and some members have been celebrating that ruling. And with what my reviewer said on the newspaper review on Kakaki, he said, according to his sources, why they are celebrating this, even if the Supreme Court has said go to the Federal High Court, go back there, that before they can get a judgment on that case, that the ADC can, have candidates for the 2027 elections before that judgment will come, so that even if Mark is removed eventually by the FHC, it will not affect, the candidacy of individuals that will present for the election. That's another angle to it, which my reviewer said his sources told him what some people in the ADC have said.
He's telling you what his sources told him. I'm telling you my own reading of it.
Yes, no, I'm saying there are different interpretations of it.
I drew our attention to the 2019 situation for the APC in Zamfara.
Yes.
And Rivers State. If the process is leading to the emergence of another national leadership, or the processes leading to your convention are flawed, which was applied in those cases, you don't have a candidate.
Yes, so it's still dicey for the ADC as well, and well, they'll be hoping they'll still get a favorable, judgment when it comes to the FHC.
High Court.
Yes,
but they have already gotten a bad judgment, an unfavorable judgment against them. Not just for this one, the Supreme Court referred them back.
Yes.
There's a judgment that have come against the David Mack-led National Working Committee.
It just shows you that the ADC is still, on shaky legs.
Absolutely.
Especially, a report came on X that said there was an emergency meeting even before the, Supreme Court judgment, and there were individuals missing, the likes of Kwankwaso, Obi, and Co. So it's
for days now, both have not been attending ADC
so it
meeting.
just shows you, are they together or not?
And so when ADC supporters were celebrating yesterday after the Supreme Court judgment, a lot of people were wondering, is there any cause for celebration really? For me, it's just like two children fighting over who will eat ice cream, who will take ice cream. One grabbed it, the other took it, and they started fighting. And the court came and said, okay, give it to baby A. But baby A, don't eat it here. Just hold it while I go and investigate who's the actual owner. That's typically the case of ADC. The baby A in this instance is the David Mack-led leadership. Hold the ice cream, but don't eat it yet. It's not yours yet. So it's after the high courts have the cases in the High Court have traveled from there to the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, that they will say, okay, eat it, is not your own, or they say, don't eat, give it to the other man, it's not your own. But it's a temporary relief.
Yes.
That may explain the celebration. But like so many observers have told them, perhaps you shouldn't even celebrate if you understand the cocoa beneath down the wider implications of the judgment. But we'll wait to see, also wait for the CTC of the ADC judgment. Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy Workers' Day again. Have a good time.